The Giants already made what's likely to be the biggest trade of this trade deadline season, and yet we're 20 days away from the trade deadline and the Giants have needs. Do they have anything else up their sleeve? We will explore.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspic, and on the show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, hosting this show for over 6 years, and I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Thank you for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. So check us out there if you have not already, and please hit that subscribe button wherever it is that you're following the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. And coming up on today's show, I'm going to be getting to the questions you guys asked on Twitter. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. A lot of questions about trades. We'll be getting to the ones that are more specific rather than general. And also questions about specific players here. Jung Hoo Lee, Marco Luciano, Kyle Tucker, and Steven Kwan. So a couple of Giants players and a couple of non-Giants players came up repeatedly. So that's really interesting. We'll explore what those questions were and we'll answer them. So regarding the trade deadline, there's several different questions. A lot of Seth Lugo coming up here, so we'll get to that. But Giants fan 2855 says, do you think the Giants would go after Ozzie Albies or Sean Murphy? So the Atlanta Braves, those players both on the Atlanta Braves, are definitely an interesting team because they were expected to contend. They have a lot of good players, and they are not contending. Their record is, you got to scroll down to find them. They're 40-52, 10 games back in the wild card race, and in the division, they are 13.5 back. So they're pretty much cooked. Could they make a miraculous run? I guess. But yeah, so getting to the question specifically about Ozzie Albies and Sean Murphy, I'm just going to right off the bat say I don't think there's any chance they go after Sean Murphy simply because of the presence of Patrick Bailey. So Sean Murphy is a better hitter. He's also a really good defender historically. There's been some ups and downs in his career when it comes to his offense. It's weird. Like sometimes his value seems really high. Like last year he didn't hit and he was hurt. He only played in 72 games. And so I don't know exactly what caused him to miss so much time, but he also didn't hit well. This year he's hitting much better. Good defensive player. I just don't think catcher is like this major need. I get it. They're not getting hardly anything offensively from Patrick Bailey besides a walk-off 3-run inside the park homer the other day. It's just not worth, like, it just doesn't really make sense to me. You've got a good, Patrick Bailey is so good defensively that I'm just not circling catcher as a position where they're going to consider changing their primary guy. Ozzie Albies is an interesting case as well because when he originally signed this contract, 7 years, $35 million with 2 club options for $7 million apiece, it was considered one of the worst contracts for a player like ever, and that his agent did a horrible job with this extension. But it's turned out that he's kind of declined already at age 28 to the point where you actually wonder if the Braves will pick up that option for next year. The thing is, it is a $7 million option with a $4 million buyout. So it's really just a $3 million decision. So it becomes actually kind of easy. But do the Braves look to upgrade on Ozzie Albies at some point? And I think they definitely could. The thing about Albies, not only is he not playing great, he is a switch hitter. He's always done so much better as a right-handed hitter than a left-handed hitter. And that's kind of the opposite of what you would want ideally, because it's kind of reverse platoon, like, short side of a platoon, as we say. And the other thing is, I don't think that the Giants want to take away from what's looking like a breakout by Casey Schmidt. Casey Schmidt on the season hitting 271, 361 on base, 430 slugging. In his career, 86 weighted runs created plus, and for Albies this season, 73 weighted runs created plus. So I get it, Albies has been better in his career, but you don't want to block. Like, this is the one position where the Giants actually have a player who's yet to establish himself, showing a lot of promise, and then I think to just block that off, because you'd probably want to bring Albies back on those club options, and then where does Schmidt play? I've some of the mailbag questions talked about Schmidt at first, but I think his defensive value is so wasted there. So I don't think either of these guys are particularly realistic. But then when we get to the next question, I don't think they're realistic because I don't think they fit. Ted says, "Hello, Ben. Ted from Indiana. Let me know your thoughts. Moves needed." Actually, I'm sorry. That's going to be the next question. Before that one, I wanted to get to Aurelia to Kent to Snow, who says, "What next, quote, took on salary trade that puts the Giants over the next tier of luxury thresholds is worth the number one, aka 2 or 3 home playoff games wildcard spot? A Larry Bear perspective." So interesting question. I mean, yeah, and I think about Buster Posey too, like wanting the division. Like, we know even in 2021, entering the year, he was like, let's take the division. And it took 107 wins. That was the last season he played, but they took the division. And so Buster is a competitive guy. I don't think he's searching for the number 3 wildcard spot. I think he does want to make moves that put them in a position to potentially be a division winner, or at the very least to get to host the first round of the playoffs, and then preferably subsequent rounds as well. But you have to be the number 1 wildcard team to host that best of 3 if you're going to make it, if you're going to play in the best of 3, or you have to be one of the top 2 division winners in the league. So I look back to the Braves, honestly, when we're looking at taking on salary. I mean, Matt Olson would fit this team pretty nicely. I don't think the Braves want to move him, but you just got to look around the league at teams that have good players signed to significant contracts that would be willing to move, and teams that would be willing to move those players. And so the Braves have a lot of guys under contract. Austin Riley, but he plays third. Matt Olson, I know they've got Devers and they've got Bryce Eldridge, but like, I don't know, would you consider moving Bryce Eldridge to have Matt Olson? Like, basically you're hoping Bryce Eldridge becomes Matt Olson, but the thing is, Eldridge would be younger and under affordable team control for a long time before becoming expensive, and Matt Olson already costing $22 million a year through 2029, so 4 more years. But man, that would give the Giants some serious middle of the order thump with Olson and Devers and Chapman and Adames. Like, suddenly this lineup would be pretty darn good, like the best we've seen in a very long time. So it's intriguing to look at. The Braves also have Marcell Ozuna, but he's just a pure DH, and he also was involved in a domestic incident and was suspended. So I don't see him as a good fit. Michael Harris, the second outfielder, signed to a 8-year, $72 million extension with the Braves, underperforming. So it's just, you have to look around the league, and there's not that many teams that are out of the race. That's the thing about expanded playoffs, is there are a lot of teams in the race. there's very few teams that are just pure sellers. So coming up in just a minute, we will continue to answer this question. I think it's among the most fascinating. Some more trade questions, and then some specific guys that you guys want to know about. Jung Hoo Lee, Marco Luciano, and then a couple of non-Giants, Kyle Tucker and Steven Kwan. All of that coming up in just a minute. And before we get into it, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that's made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you will find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled pros are already taking advantage. Now it is your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, as promised, we're going to get to more of your questions. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday will be breaking down the end of the unofficial first half for the Giants. 3-game series against the Dodgers coming up. So, as I discussed yesterday, there's a few possible outcomes, and it ranges from like 2 games out of first place to 8 games out of first place. So it's a big series for the Giants. Like, if they can do really well, it could make a huge difference. If they do really poorly, it can make a huge difference. So we'll be breaking down what happens on Monday. And then it'll be the All-Star break. So continuing to answer this question about players they could basically pull a Devers on, like, in terms of taking on money. Again, like, you have to, it's hard because, like, the Red Sox, you wouldn't really have thought going into the year that Devers would be traded. That's why it was so stunning. So it's hard to know exactly what teams would have players that they would just move like this. One guy, just to think about, I guess, would be Mike Trout, but looking at that contract, he's still owed like $37 million a year through 2030, and he's already about to turn 34 years old, and he's just been hurt a lot. But he is Mike Trout, and if you had him in the middle of your lineup again, like, suddenly your lineup is just super dangerous. But also you're like looking at a bunch of players who are on the wrong side of 30. Even now, like, Chapman is 32, I think, and Trout is 34 almost. So, and then he's under contract for age 35, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So I kind of throw that one out, even though I'm the one who just mentioned it. I don't know. Like, you've got to look at each and every team in terms of taking on money. I really think the Braves are a team that could make the most sense in that regard. If Matt Olson became available somehow, I think that makes potentially a lot of sense. There's, I don't know, Christian Yelich, he's 33 and not nearly the player he once was. I don't think that makes sense. He's under contract for 3 additional seasons. I'm just looking at, like, the Mets. Juan Soto, yeah, right. He's not going anywhere. Nobody on the Phillies is going anywhere. They would love to move Nick Castellanos, I'm sure, but nobody's taken on that contract. Texas Rangers, Corey Seager. I don't see them wanting to move Corey Seager. Maybe Marcus Semien, but he's like gonna be 35 soon. So I don't know. I'll just say that the Braves probably make the most sense as a match there in that regard. And Yeah, that's what I'll say about that. How about Yordan Alvarez? That would be something. He's been hurt a ton with the Astros. If they would be willing to move Yordan Alvarez, I mean, you would definitely listen, but I seriously doubt that they would be. So, I don't know. I mean, there's other Red Sox players, even people have talked about Jarren Duran, who is arbitration eligible for several years. So it's still a cheap contract for Duran. So that doesn't really fit that mold. I guess to me, Matt Olson is the guy if you want an answer like specifically to that question. So, okay, Ted. Hello, Ben. Ted from Indiana. Let me know your thoughts. Moves needed. Closer. Johan Duran, not Jarren Duran. Johan Duran. Nasty and 2 years of control ground ball machine. And then Seth Lugo. No, you mentioned Jeffrey Springs. So we'll talk about Duran and Springs really quickly. So for the Twins, I could see them moving Duran. Like this might be he might have the highest value he ever has. They could wait until the offseason. Duran is very good. That would certainly, you're right, he's a ground ball machine. Crazy ground ball rate of like 70%. Has not allowed a homer. Averages over 100 miles an hour with his fastball, which is like a bowling ball sinker, ERA 152. Yeah, I mean, guys like this are not cheap to acquire when it comes to trade capital. He's earning like $4 million this year. And then, like you said, 2 more years of control. That would really shore up this bullpen and make it elite. And maybe, I really do think, even though the bullpen has the best ERA in baseball, that you could see them add a reliever and not just like some back end type reliever, but it's an interesting idea. Like go for just, if you're leading after 5 or 6, like the game's over type of thing. We've seen that be successful in the playoffs, and maybe Buster is thinking that same kind of thing. So that's an interesting thought as the Twins are having, they're 4 out of a wild card spot, but they're 3 under 500, 13 and a half back in the division behind the Tigers. So you mentioned Jeffrey Springs from Sacramento. So Springs, the Giants just faced him, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't recall how that went for the Giants, but he has a 3.92 ERA, 4.14 expected ERA, 4.79 fielding independent pitching, career ERA of 3.52, but he spent a lot of time as a reliever. He became a full-time starter pretty much in 2022, and since that time, 2.97 ERA. He did miss a lot of time in 2023 and 2024 with injuries, and he is 1 year away. He has 1 more year on his contract, and then there's a club option for 2027. Left-handed pitcher. Yeah, I think that pitching, surprisingly, is possibly, arguably, the Giants' biggest need going into the trade deadline. So, yeah, Jeffrey Springs is not like the top of my list kind of guy, but he is an interesting name, and I would pay attention. And the numbers since he became a full-time starter are very intriguing, but the numbers this year to me aren't that intriguing. I'd have to dive deeper into how he's been so good at run prevention the last several years. His last 287 innings, throws like 90, 91 with his fastball. Anyway, there's also a lot of questions about Seth Lugo. We have questions about Seth Lugo from Mike and from Giants fan. Also, Giants fan also mentions Ryan O'Hearn. So, and then Jay also mentions Seth Lugo. So quickly, Seth Lugo, ERA 2.67. The peripheral number's not so good, but he's just managed to be effective even with not so great peripheral numbers. Going back, similar to Springs, 3 years, he's got a 3.11 ERA. So, yeah, maybe the type of guy that Buster wouldn't care that the peripheral numbers aren't so good. I see like red flags with the expected ERA, with the fielding independent pitching. They're both in the like mid fours, despite an actual ERA of 2.67. I don't really know if that's sustainable. He's stranding a ridiculous amount of base runners, which I don't see as sustainable. So he's also 35 years old. He has a player option for next year. Those always scare me. And I don't know, he's having such a good year. Maybe he wouldn't exercise it in terms of ERA, but those peripheral numbers not so good. And it's a $15 million player option. So Ryan O'Hearn would be, like if you can't get a Matt Olson or whatever, Ryan O'Hearn is having a very nice offensive season. It's probably going to be one of the top most highly sought after bats on the market, because he's not only having a very good year, but he's also a free agent at the end of the year, making just what is his salary this year? It's cheap. It's not an expensive salary. And so like every team that's looking for an upgrade at first base, DH, outfield, where he's played all of those, it's $8 million, by the way, is going to be interested in this guy, assuming the Orioles are selling. And they indicated that they are selling by trading a reliever for a supplemental draft pick. Those are the only picks you can actually trade. I think it was yesterday or the day before. So I like O'Hearn. I don't think he's like some major difference maker, but he would definitely help any team, including the Giants. But there's going to be a lot of competition for him. I'm stuck on Matt Olson. Now that you've got the idea in my head, or I guess I put the idea into my own head, I'm stuck on the idea. But it would block Bryce Eldridge. I bet the Braves would want Bryce Eldridge as part of a deal. So maybe I'm dumb for even thinking about that, but it's super enticing. And you would reunite him with Matt Chapman. That would be, I'm sure he would be happy to be here. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, he played for Oakland, so maybe. I don't know. Anyway, coming up in just a minute, individual player questions: Jung Hoo Lee, Luciano, Kyle Tucker, Steven Kwan. All of that in just a minute. And before we get into it, today's episode of Locked On Giants is brought to you in part by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with friends and family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands. That's exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch. I've got this awesome Giants City Connect Rafi Devers shirt that I'm wearing right now. Or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Game Time makes it possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually drop the closer you get to first pitch. And they've got an incredible last-minute deal all the time, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game like, I don't know, Giants-Dodgers. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, here we go. We're going to get into more questions and answers about some specific players. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. Everydayers on Monday, breaking down the end of the unofficial first half with the Giants playing 3 games against the Dodgers. They won 2 out of 3 against the Phillies. If they could do the same against LA, that would be huge. Even just winning 1. I said going into the homestand, I would take a 500 homestand against the Phillies and Dodgers, who came into that week as 2 of the 3 best teams in the National League. It's tough, but obviously you want to do better now that you've won a series against Philly and sweep these Dodgers who have lost, I think, 6 in a row. So anyway, some Jung Hoo Lee questions. Ha-seong Kim asks, how much should we be worried about Jung Hoo Lee? Seems the league caught up with him, but what are we doing to readjust? Are the hitting coaches or his dad working with him? Taylor says, what's up with Jung Hoo Lee? Is he going to bounce back in the second half? And then Craig says, why does Jung Hoo Lee look so bad at the plate? So, yeah, it's no secret that Jung Hoo Lee has been struggling basically after a hot first few weeks, really, at the plate. He did kind of turn it back around, but then, yeah, I mean, it's just been kind of rough since towards the end of April. And overall on the season, it's worth pointing out, like, I think it doesn't really matter how the sequencing goes. Like, you could have started out really cold and then gotten red hot, and then our opinions are very different. We're like, now he's red hot. But I think it doesn't matter. It kind of does in this case because he's new to the league, and you definitely could make an argument that the league has made adjustments. But the point I'm trying to make is that overall, he's been about league average offensively, almost to a T, with a 99 weighted runs created plus. 100 indicates league average offense, so 1% below major league average offensively, with good base running and center field defense. Although defensive runs saved has him at -3. I don't buy that. To me, the eye test, he's been a good defensive center fielder. It's 1.5 Fangraphs wins above replacement. All the projection systems have him at roughly 3 by the end of the year. So 2.5 to 3. And that's an above average player, even if he hits at all the projection systems have him producing still like 10 to 15% above average. So I'm not too worried. I actually look back to Ha-seong Kim, who played for the Padres for a long time, not to be confused with the new Dodgers player. Ha-seong Kim is now on the Tampa Bay Rays. But Ha-seong Kim had a miserable first year in the major leagues. And really, we can still think of this as Jung Hoo Lee's first year in the majors. He's only played in the major leagues 126 games. Part of last season, only 37 games, and part of this season. So I think there's an adjustment period when you come from Korea to the major leagues. And he's only 26 years old. There's plenty of prospects who like debut around this age. And it's just a big leap in talent level from Korea to the majors. And so the fact that he's like holding his own and like treading water, at least, to me is encouraging. And we've seen what he can do. And so I think that ultimately he will adjust back, maybe some rest, maybe the All-Star break will do him wonders to mentally reset, but also physically rest a little bit. I look for him to have a better second half than what we've seen since the end of April, which has been a real struggle. That's just my opinion. So the question's about Marco Luciano. Lane says, Marco Luciano hit another home run last night, that would be, and is at 17 now for the season. He is their best trade chip. Would the Giants deal him to improve right field, first base, or a starter? Those all seem more like slight upgrade spots and may not be worth Luciano, especially now that he might be figuring it out. Number one, Blake Snell hater says, do you think Luciano will be traded? Will he be used as part of a trade package? And then Bearded Vet Danny says, is now the time to trade Luciano, or does he get another shot? How much longer do you think Verlander has until a move is finally made? So I'm not going to get to the Verlander question, but Luciano, I'm always checking on him down in AAA. The numbers, it's just worth mentioning, are inflated in the Pacific Coast League. So yeah, he's got 17 home runs, but his strikeout rate is over 30%, 30.3, which is, it would get higher, you would presume, in the major leagues from AAA. And so that's a concern. Also, he's only been 3% better than average according to weighted runs created plus. He is just hitting 226. Nice walk rate. He's definitely improved in the plate discipline area. .339 on base is solid, .443 slugging, but that's roughly league average production in AAA. And so he's kind of stalled out in AAA, and that's not what you want to see. Notably, the Giants having optioned him this year, it's the last year he can be optioned. So going into next year, he would either have to be on the major league team or be designated for assignment or traded. And so that's an issue. And so he's definitely a trade candidate, but I don't think there's tremendous amount of trade value there. But certainly for a 23-year-old who was formerly like a top 10 prospect in baseball, there's going to be some interest. And so I would not be shocked if they traded him. And I think Buster Posey, more likely than Farhan Zaidi, is going to be bold, and you definitely could see him traded. I don't think the value is as high as you might think based on like 17 home runs, because there's definitely some red flags in that performance there in AAA. So Kyle Tucker and Steven Kwan, Bay Sports says, what contract would Kyle Tucker command? That would be a free agent contract going into next year. Bay Sports also says, do the Giants have a legit shot at Kyle Tucker this offseason? And then Garrett says, unrealistic trade question. For next season, would you rather trade for Steven Kwan and move him to right field or sign Kyle Tucker? And then Jason says, Steven Kwan season, ? So that's one team, the Guardians, to look at because they are many games out. They're 14.5 back in the division and 5 back of a wild card spot. So would they consider moving a Steven Kwan? When I look at their roster, like they're a team to definitely look at and think about. They're always like tinkering. They have to because they don't really pay up. So Steven Kwan has 2 years of team control left after this year. So he could be the kind of out of nowhere guy to get traded. It's definitely possible. And Steven Kwan grew up a Giants fan. Like there is a lot to love. Doesn't strike out, high batting average, gets on base, not a lot of power, but Giants don't need that in their ballpark, and good defender. So Giants would love to get Steven Kwan onto their roster. Left-handed hitter. It's weird. They've kind of struggled against left-handed pitching, but yet you could argue that they're too right-handed as a lineup. Probably changes once Devers gets hot, which I assume will happen at some point. I would love to see Steven Kwan in a Giants uniform. Steven Kwan, for the record, he has not been great against left-handed. Well, he's been league average, actually, against left-handed pitching in his career, and against right-handed pitching, 23% above average offense. And he's an everyday player because of the defense and the speed that he brings to the table. So this is like a perfect player for the Giants. And then in terms of Kyle Tucker, I would love, I don't know, like either or. I would be thrilled either way. What kind of contract will Kyle Tucker command? A big one. I can't off the top of my head. I could have prepared this, but my answer is just he's going to command an enormous contract. And he's going into his age 29 season next year. He was drafted out of Florida, so I don't think the Giants are the most likely destination, but probably a guy they will pursue. Maybe more likely to be able to come together on a trade package for Steven Kwan, perhaps. But Kyle Tucker is an impact bat and would be a great signing for the Giants. It's hard for me to say which I would rather have. Kyle Tucker is 28, going to be 29, like I said. Steven Kwan is 27, will turn 28 at the end of September, and free agent after the 2027 season, but a guy you could extend like right away probably. I'm sure he would be thrilled to be a Giant, grew up a big Giants fan. So, yeah. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick, Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance, and thank you to everyone who's done so already. I can't wait to be with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend. Thanks again for listening today. You are now Locked on Giants.